Any health-related information on the following show provides general information only. Content presented on any show by any host or guest should not be substituted for a doctor's advice. Always consult your physician before beginning any new diet, exercise, or treatment program.
Welcome to Five to Thrive Live, a podcast about thriving for those who've been affected by cancer and chronic disease. I'm Dr. Lisa Schuler, and I co-host with my good friend Carolyn Gazella. You can find all of our past show podcasts on every major podcast outlet and our schedule on ithriveplan.com. So tonight, I'm very excited. I'm going to be talking with my friend, colleague, my amazing collaborator, Amita Nathwani, and she's going to talk to us about Ayurveda. She wears lots of hats. She's an educator, she's a practitioner, she's a businesswoman. And tonight, I think she's going to don her educator persona and really give us a kind of sweeping overview of Ayurveda. So Amita Nathwani is a practitioner, author, educator of Ayurvedic medicine for over 25 years. And she is a graduate of the Maharishi School of Ayurveda in India and the Maharishi International University in the United States. She has a master's degree in Ayurveda, and she bridges traditional Ayurvedic teachings with modern medical models. She is on the fellowship faculty at the Andrew Weil Center for Integrative Medicine, where she teaches Ayurveda. She also teaches anatomy and physiology at acupuncture schools, where she translates complex concepts into practical applications. And she's on faculty at Sonoran University for her expertise in Ayurveda. So she is definitely somebody that we're going to learn a lot from. But before we start our conversation, I want to thank our sponsors. First, Cetria, a patented form of glutathione, clinically proven to raise blood glutathione levels. Glutathione is a master antioxidant and the body's primary defense against free radicals. And it also helps to support respiratory health. You can learn more at cetriaglutathione.com. We also thank Cognizin Citicoline, which is nature's way of keeping the brain's energy production up and running so that your memory, your brain function, your cognition, your focus, attention is all doing its best. And you can look for Cognizin on the label of dietary supplements or go to cognizin.com for more information. We also thank ProThrivers Wellness Supplements, which includes ProThrivers Wellness Sleep, a supplement which combines higher than normal doses of melatonin along with other sleep-supporting natural ingredients, which are specifically designed for thrivers. And you can find ProThrivers Wellness Sleep at pureformulas.com. And finally, Dr. Ohhira's Probiotics, a best-selling probiotic for over 30 years with 12 probiotic strains, which are shelf-stable without refrigeration due to their unique 3-year fermentation process. And you can learn more at drohhiraprobiotics.com. So with that, hello, Amita. Welcome to Five to Thrive Live.
Thank you so much. I'm so happy to be here.
Absolutely. Well, I'm so happy to talk to you about this topic of all topics. So, okay, let's start with a little time traveling. And I want to take us back to the very birth of Ayurveda. So when and where are we?
So it's a great question. You know, one of the common statements that are made by Ayurvedic doctors is that, we are a 5,000-year-old system of health. But, really when we talk about the birth of Ayurveda, we're talking about the emergence of like a complete medical epistemology that unfolded across really several hundred years. And it's a living science, which means that it continues to grow based on climate, access, agriculture. So it's not something that was just developed immediately. It took time through its own development of research and understanding for it to become the medicine that it is today. And going back 5,000 years to the Indus civilizations, where the earliest references to disease, herbs, and healing appeared in what we call the traditional texts of the Vedas, Vedas, the Vedas. And these are considered Ayurveda's seed texts, not only does it address the physical, emotional, and mental aspects of our day-to-day life, but it also touches on the spiritual components and the big questions of why are we here? What are we doing on this planet? And how do we interact with our natural environment?
Mm-hmm. Yeah, fantastic. Well, you know, Ayurveda must have something for just, going for it because it survived all these thousands of years. And yet it has evolved over that time period as well a bit. So has it changed, would you say, significantly, or is it basically the same thing now that it was 5,000 years ago?
It has changed, absolutely, as it should, and as most medicines should. It is a living science, and what has remained unchanged, however, its core principles. So, just as the human physiology, this understanding became a lot deeper for me in my practice when I started teaching anatomy and physiology to acupuncture students, because one of the things that we cannot dispute is the makeup of the human body. And so, what is the role between lifestyle and disease? What is the role of the digestion, and gut health, and how it pertains to mental health? What is truly the way that the body functions so that we can look at pathology, the disease process? It goes in a certain pattern. And this is something that Ayurveda holds very true, because the human body itself does function in a particular way based on the elements. However, of course, we've evolved. We've evolved for so many different reasons. The environment around us, the type of pathogens that we're exposed to. Also, Ayurveda and a lot of living sciences like this come from the East. But when we translate it and bring it into climates in the West today, we can clearly see that not all of its application can be practical or even applicable at all. Like some of the botanicals that grow in East Asia do not grow here in the West. Should we really be utilizing that for our current disease management based on the pathogens that we experience in our current environment? So, for that reason, we have to keep evolving and changing, but we do not change the principles behind it.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, that's a really good distinction, I think, because it's the principles that holds the philosophy together and really gives it its power. And I think that, the principles essentially give the vitality to the medicine. And then, of course, as humanity evolves, how those principles are translated into our modern life is going to be different than it was 5,000 years ago. So, yeah, that makes total sense. So, how would you describe the uniqueness of Ayurveda, especially when you compare it to other types of holistic or natural medicines?
So, because we did talk about how, earlier I mentioned that it's a medicine that was developed over time in its completeness. So
Mm-hmm.
it is a complete medical system. So it's not just botanicals, it's not just diet, it's not just lifestyle, but it also includes diagnostics, pathology, even its own pharmacology, psychology, surgery itself as well, including preventative medicine. So, a lot of times I have patients who come to see me and they say, well, I really want to take the holistic route. I do not want to do surgery. And at that point, I take the time to break it to them that, surgery is not mutually exclusive of holistic medicine. Even 5,000 years ago, we were correcting imbalances. Sometimes it was from a prevention standpoint, and sometimes it was from a more invasive standpoint. But the point is that what makes Ayurveda unique is that it focuses on the cause of the imbalance first, not just the symptom, but then by understanding how something happened, what the disease stage is, we get to treat it at the level that's necessary. And sometimes just botanical, sometimes just diet, sometimes just perspective and change of one's emotional and mental state of being can inherently define a person's health. And in other cases, because of the disease stage or what has occurred, surgery is necessary. And this is what makes Ayurveda so uniquely different than other forms of holistic medicine.
Mm-hmm. Okay. So you kind of implied this, but key, I think, to Ayurveda is the connection that we have to the natural world. And I'm wondering if you could elaborate on that a little bit and why that's so central to understanding Ayurvedic medicine.
Yeah, so this sometimes can become a little esoteric to a certain extent, but we are not separate from nature. We're just we're like trees, except we're extensions of the earth, but we happen to be moving around at the same time. Everything that exists, there are books and philosophies written that state that the entire natural world is made up of the five elements, including us. And everything else is just perception.
Mhm.
And so because of this, we cannot separate ourselves from the world around us. And this is when, our lifestyles move away from natural rhythms, our sleep cycles and the seasons, hunger cues, things like that. This is where we start to see little bits of pathology kicking in, or the disease process. So Ayurveda brings us back to that alignment. We say more than 50% of diseases and disorders can be eliminated by simply reconnecting back to nature. And a lot of times that, for people who live in big cities, they say, well, that's really hard for me to do, to get into, the forest or to get to a lake. I do it on the weekends, but that's not what that means. It means following circadian rhythms. It means following seasonal changes, going to the farmer's market and asking your farmer, did you grow this? And did this really grow in this climate? Did you use a cold frame? Where did this come from? Is this something that I should be eating in this climate at this time? Do we know where our food is coming from? Are we just moving? We can't look at our external environment and dictate how our internal environment is going to process just based on what's on the outside of us. We also get the opportunity to make those changes from within. So we can create that natural movement. We can create that natural emotional balance. I think about, sometimes it's an extreme example, but I think about people who are incarcerated and manage to find peace within themselves in a place where they don't have all of these things that we're talking about here, access to, maybe whole foods, or maybe access to rivers and trees. But when you are able to harness that type of understanding of yourself with your natural environment on its own, then I think we can achieve a sense of balance that we don't really need to go too much farther for that.
Mm-hmm.
A
Yeah. Okay.
reconnection. Yeah, a
Go ahead.
reconnection. A reconnection really is what restores health.
Yeah. Yeah. Okay. I think that that's important. And honestly, I feel like this is really a key thing to the health of humanity right now, especially as we get more technologically dependent. And with that, the risk of isolation from each other, but also from the natural world, looms large. And I think if we unhinge ourselves from the natural world around us, I don't know how we will maintain our collective sanity, honestly, never mind our health, right? So I think this is a very important teaching that Ayurveda has for us, actually. So,
Yeah.
sorry, go ahead.
Well, I was just agreeing with you, and also wanted to just add that, at the end of the day, the quality of compassion, we can have that within us without really even having to see another person. We can build that within ourselves. And if we have it for us, it just naturally flows out. And, the thing is that as we kind of look at the way that our bodies function in terms of science, we can't ignore the fact that everything is vibration as well. And so the way that we think, the way that we feel, the way that we choose to live our lives on a day-to-day basis, whether it's in front of a screen or in nature, this reverberates out to the rest of the world. And so when we feel helpless and we don't know what to do, um, Ayurveda always reminds us to go back within and to hold those qualities of love and compassion for yourself, because if that's the only thing we can do, we're doing so much in that moment.
Mm-hmm. Yes, very true. So I want to just I know this is a big question, but maybe so many people associate Ayurveda with the doshas. And so if you could just take us just quickly, if you can, through the doshas, like what are they and why is it so important to Ayurveda?
For sure. So the doshas, even though, they can be individualized as body types, they're really more, we call them qualities or humors. And what we want to know is that what dosha is involved in whatever we're addressing. So although we can have one of these doshas as a predominance, we really want to know in that given moment, regardless of who you are, and what your dosha might be, what is involved, what is actually happening, what is most predominant. So when we talk about the doshas, we're really breaking it down again, going back to my original commentary on the 5 elements. We're going back to that again. So when we put the 5 elements according to Ayurveda, it's called the Mahabhutas, the great elements, and they are space or ether, air, fire, water, and earth. And when we put them all together, what we do is we come to a place where within the body structure itself, we can start to see these elements manifest themselves. So ether and air is basically anything that creates space, the cavities of the body, or anything that moves within the body, respiration, elimination, circulation. And we actually call this vata, V-A-T-A, and that is one of the doshas. The second is when we see fire and water together within the body itself. And there we see it manifest itself as metabolism, not just of the body, but also of the mind, transformation, production of enzymes, production of hormones, anything that converts from A to B. And that's what we call pitta, which is another dosha, P-I-T-T-A. And then the last way we look at how the body functions is through its structure, bones, muscles, tissues, etc. It's all the structural element of the body itself. And we call this is earth and water together. And we call this kapha, K-A-P-H-A. And so we have vata, pitta, and kapha as the 3 doshas. And we have to have all 3 of these doshas within our body. Obviously, we cannot function without transportation, circulation, movement. We can't function without metabolism nor the actual structure of the body. But what ends up happening is that we do start to see tendencies within us, both physically and mentally, of how we show up in the world. Are we more vatic by nature? Is our body more vatic? Is it airy? Is it cold? Is it dry? Are we hot? Are we more pitta by nature? Is it hot? Is it oily? Or are we more earthy by nature? Are we heavier set, larger bone structure? And we can start to see these qualities within the mental systems as well. And this is where we start to see our predominance come through. But as an Ayurvedic doctor, I'm very much more interested in what has become out of balance in your body. So, for example, if you are pitta in nature, which Dr. Schuler, you are more pitta in nature,
Yes.
you've got some fire in you, strong metabolism. You can see the problem, see the solution. You go no brainer. These are a lot of the qualities that you have within you. Build muscle mass very quickly. You have definition of your muscular strength. When you have this quality in you, the question we're asking is, are you in a healthy state with it, or has there become an imbalance? Are you becoming too hot, too inflamed? Are you being too quick to respond instead of thinking about your answer before making a judgment call? So we wonder, has pitta increased? On the flip side, you could say, wow, I feel very sluggish these days. I feel like I've gotten a lot heavier. I'm very tired when I wake up every morning. I feel like my digestion has gotten lower. Although pitta might be your constitution, kapha has really set in. And as your provider, I would address you as that kapha imbalance rather than that pitta imbalance first, just to see forest from the trees. And the last is that if you become, emaciated or anxious, inability to eat or focus, I would ask you then, is vata increased? And at that point, we would take different measures to help you hone that in. And each disease and disorder starts with a little bit of that vata, pitta, kapha imbalance that moves it and pushes it into different systems and organs, where then it manifests again into other vata, pitta, and kapha types of manifestations. And a great example, if I could, is an example of this would be, somebody with acid reflux. Acid reflux can happen for many different reasons. It could be because there's a hiatal hernia, for example, or it could be because there is a lesion or an ulcer in the epigastric region, or it could be because the gallbladder is sluggish and the body's not able to break down fats correctly, so it's having an upward effect causing the reflux. And so how we address it would be in that vata, pitta, and kapha way. If there is a hernia, that is a vata dysfunction. The structural function is the proper upward movement, and downward movement is not functioning correctly. If it were a lesion or an ulcer, that's a pitta disorder. But if there's sluggishness in the gallbladder, then that's a kapha disorder. That's all addressing the same manifestation or the same symptom. And so we look at vata, pitta, kapha not only as body types and predominance, but we also look at them in terms of, now how are we going to address the disorder?
Mm-hmm. Yeah, it's interesting because it sounds so simple on the surface, and yet as you were breaking that down, it's quite complex. And I can see why it takes quite a bit of training for people to become skilled Ayurvedic practitioners. Because there's a lot there, and just understanding the nuance of that and how things are presenting as one sort of doshic issue, but in fact might be another, or, have overlapping. So I appreciate that explanation. I'm wondering if you could just go back to spirituality and the mind-body connection and sort of tie that in a little bit more. Is there anything else you'd like to say about that? Because that does seem also very important to really appreciating Ayurveda.
Yes, we're so happy that, neuroscience today is really proving the thing that Ayurveda has been connecting, but not really being able to showcase in the same way it can today. And that is that the mind and the body are one system. It's beautiful. And thoughts influence physiology, and trauma shapes inflammation, stress impacts digestion, immunity, and hormones. And so we consider beliefs, emotions, consciousness, intuition as essential contributors to health. And healing the body without addressing the mind, that makes it an incomplete perspective of Ayurveda. And I oftentimes, when I'm about to see a new patient, I will ask, are you comfortable addressing both the physiological needs that you might have in addition to any emotional or mental needs, or vice versa? If somebody comes to me for psychospiritual counseling, can we also talk about the physical body? Because without one, we cannot address the other. It's like one will always hold the other one back from really getting to where we want to go. We have to work as a team. And sometimes, we forget that. We forget that we are one in the body together. And even the thoughts we have of, so often I know as human beings, we're just so hard on ourselves. And, I'm going to continue to go back to that idea of compassion and love. Imagine the way we talk to ourselves sometimes when we make mistakes, or we're trying to do something and it's not happening, or we're pushing things out of the mind because we don't want to be hurt. Imagine if we did that to the people on the outside of us. It would be very harmful. And I'm always here to remind us that, how you treat yourself mentally and emotionally is really how you treat yourself physically. And if you can start there, then you're already on your way to full health.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. Very, very true. So we just have a few minutes left, and I guess I have several questions. We're not going to get to all of them, but I think that there's a bit of controversy about yoga. So yoga comes from the Ayurvedic tradition. I think a lot of people assume that yoga encapsulates Ayurveda. You've obviously given us a lot more to think about and really helped us to understand that that doesn't. But how do you feel about how yoga is practiced in the U.S.? Is it a fair representation, or are there, do you have any concerns about it?
Sure. So, well, let me tell you what yoga is to start with. The word yoga itself means mind-body connection. Okay, so, I'm all for yoga for exercise. It is one of the therapeutic tools in Ayurveda. Ayurveda is the medical system. Yoga is one of its therapeutic tools. And it can be used to balance the doshas and support organ systems, regulate the nervous system. It can help with breathing and promote pranayama. It can be used together as a complete approach to healing. And here's the only thing I have to say about the way that it's practiced in the West. If one wants to go to an acrobatic yoga class and do yoga and a cocktail afterwards, or do yoga with goats, or if they do partner yoga, I believe that all of these things are beautiful. They're moving the body and exercising, being with animals, how wonderful. And if someone wants to go have a beverage after they do yoga, that is fine. The only thing I would say is yoga has not occurred. That is not yoga. That's all I'll say about that. Because true yoga is definitely setting up the body for a healing process. And there's a difference between the internal work that we do and the external work that we do in the world. And the internal work, like I had mentioned earlier, just to tie it back, the physical and the mental are not separate. So yoga, the kind of yoga that we do in Ayurveda as a daily practice, is actually setting the body up for mindfulness and breath work, or meditation and pranayama, whatever you want to call it. And it creates and starts the day in that place of complete union of oneself with their mind, body, and spirit. And from there, we go out into the world. And when we're out into the world and we do acrobatic yoga, then we're doing acrobats. But it is not truly yoga. At this point, there is physical therapy. So in the Ayurvedic text, we do have physical therapy, and there are yoga asanas that are used for therapeutic purposes. And in that way, it can be just such an incredible tool. Just being able to distinguish the two and acknowledge where it came from, that's all I ask of it.
Okay, fair enough. Well, Amita, this has been really just wonderful conversation, and I'm wondering if you have any website or social media that you'd like to share?
Sure. I do. I have a website, amitaayurveda.com, and there I have access to some recipes that I like to share, some writings that I've done, books that I've published on Ayurveda, cooking, psychospirituality, and just access to really anything Ayurveda that anyone's interested in.
All right. Well, thank you so much. Well, this has been a great show, and I really appreciate your time. And that wraps up this episode of 5 to Thrive Live. So again, we thank our sponsors, Pro Thrivers Wellness Sleep Formula, Cetria Glutathione to support antioxidation in the body, Cognizin Citicoline for brain health, and Dr. Ohira's award-winning shelf-stable probiotic. Thank you, listener, for joining us, and may you experience joy, laughter, and love. It's time to thrive, everyone. Have a great night.